Just thoughts on being back to Indiana. What was the intriguing part of it?
Well, I absolutely love it. You know, in your career, you only get a few times to go back home, and this is an opportunity for me to come back home. And when Coach Wilson reached out and he offered me the job, I mean, I was over the moon. You know, it's just this place is a deep, dear place in my heart. So when I had the opportunity to come back, it was a no-brainer.
And in your philosophy as a coach, what do you look for in defensive linemen?
Well, you know, I go back to my Mallory days and toughness. He's got to be a tough kid. In this day and age, toughness isn't something that a lot of people stress, but to play the position and to play it at a high level, you have to be tough, because like I tell those guys every day, the way your body feels today, it'll never feel this way again until after the season's over with. So you've got to be tough. And this is a league where they run the ball, and you've got to be tough enough, and you've got to be able to withstand the pounding that you're going to face in this league. So toughness, quickness, they have to be smart. They have to be passionate about the sport. You know, this isn't something that you can just go into half-heartedly. So those are the big things that I'm looking for.
You mentioned the league. How different is it from, you know, when you see what teams do schematically and everything else? How different is it from when you played?
You know what? Not much. Not much. It's, you know, it's some window dressing, but at the end of the day, in this league, teams are going to run the ball. I think that with Coach Meyer over at Ohio State, they're doing some things a little differently, and then obviously what our offense does. You know, that's why we led the league, just because you know, we're doing something a little different. But it's a tradition-rich league, so you know, from the standpoint of if it's not broke, don't fix it. You know, and that's what the league is.
I could be wrong. When you were here, did you guys transition from a 5-2 to a 4-3?
We did.
And what was that like? And then how might that inform you helping these guys if there's a transition?
Yeah, you know, we did, and that would have been. I was just talking to Jim Butler about that. That was '91, I believe, '91 or '92. We went from a 5-2, which was an odd front, to a 4-3, which is more of a 4-down front. Yeah. And that played to our strengths. You know, at that time, I was a nose guard. Hervin McCormick was one of the defensive tackles who played in the NFL for many years. Bernard Whittington was one of the ends. Another guy who played in the league, Nate Davis. So it just transitioned to what our strengths were. You know, we weren't an overly big front, so Coach wanted us to use our athletic ability, so it worked well for us. Very similar to what I think Coach Norris' defense is going to do with the pieces that we have in place here right now.
I talked to Coach Hagan, you know, who was here just a couple of years ago, and he said, you know, he said, I remember the opener in Notre Dame didn't go particularly well for us. Right. He said it took us 2 or 3 games to do it, but it was the right thing for our personnel.
Sure.
And so is that the key here?
I think so. Yeah. I think so. I think that based on, you know, our size, the kids that we have coming back into our program, I think what Coach Norris' defense has done fits our personnel well, and that's what it boils down to. It's a personnel type league. You want to be able to match your best players up against what the offenses do.
Have you seen Indiana recently, and what were your impressions generally? You know, they obviously played well against Bowling Green last year. Talk a little bit about what you saw.
Yeah, you know what? The one thing that I was very impressed with was at that time, there were a lot of injuries, and the team was able to, offensively especially, they were able to sustain what it is they were doing. They did a heck of a job because, you know, we finished the season last year at BG. I think we were 8th in total defense. So, you know, we were able to do some things against a lot of teams that we didn't have that success here versus Coach Wilson's offense. So, and then defensively, you know, obviously I was making corrections during that time, but I've had a chance to watch him if I had a bye week or just some highlights or those kind of things. And I think all the pieces are in place. It's just a matter of getting the kids in the right place, helping them to be successful.
How familiar are you with the personnel on the defensive line here? There's several guys from Midwest. Are they guys you knew from high school or maybe recruited a little bit?
Well, you know, yes and no. A lot of those guys, if you guys remember being in the Mid-American Conference, I wasn't recruiting the same guys that the Big Ten's recruiting. Initially, I would have been, but traditionally, once they get that Big Ten offer, they move to another level of recruitment. You know, we traditionally can't, I mean, there's not a Big Ten team that when I was at Bowling Green that we could offer a kid at BG and then say an IU or, I won't even mention that team up north, but Illinois or Minnesota, they offer those guys and instantly, you know, we're no longer on their radar. So for the most part, with the way recruiting is happening now, just like the kids we have over there right now, they already have offers. So a lot of those kids, no, I didn't have familiarity with because they were already off our radar.
You mentioned Coach Mallory, basically. I mean, how much does, you know, having played for him, still kind of inform you as a defensive coach?
It's everything that I do. Not only from a coaching standpoint, from a life standpoint. I mean, that man is, other than my parents, I mean, he's the next closest thing that I have as a person. So everything I do is influenced by Bill Mallory. From the way that I talk to people, from the way that I coach on the field, from the way that I present in homes, to the way that I'm presenting to you guys now. You know, those are all the things that when you played for Coach Mallory for 4 or 5 years, those are all the things that he taught us.
Have you talked to Bill since you took the job?
I have. I reached out to Coach right after I accepted the job. I think obviously my first call was to my wife, and then my second call was to my mother, and my third call was to Coach Mallory. So I wanted to make sure that he felt good about it, that he knew what was going on, because obviously the transition was tough for his family in one instance, but the transition was great for his family in the other instance, because obviously I like to think, as well as I think he does, that any of his former players are part of his family.
How much have you been able to kind of look at the personnel you have, or has it been mostly just kind of trying to hit the ground running recruiting-wise?
Hit the ground running in recruiting. You know what? I really haven't had a ton of time to spend with our guys yet, and I'm looking forward to that. And to next week when we get into the signing period, yeah, I can't wait to where I can sit down with my guys and just share some philosophical things, the things that I want to bring to the program, and I want their feedback, and just so we can get together and I can start really getting to know them.
You talked about, if I could ask you to expand a little bit, you talked about toughness and quickness. Do you like a quick twitch? So some of the other specific things you look for when you're watching a high school film on a kid. What kind of things do you want to see?
Well, you're right. I want to see a first and second step. I want him to have the ability to get a second step in the ground relatively quickly. I want to see a whole game. I want to see how he plays throughout the course of the game. I don't want to see, this is the day of the highlight tape. 2 or 3 clips to get us all ooh wow, and then all of a sudden you watch a whole game, and if a kid takes 1 play off or 2 play off, that's not the kind of kid we want here. He's not going to succeed in what it is we're trying to do. So I want to watch a whole game tape. I want to see how he pursues to the ball. I want to see if he plays both sides of the ball. I'd like to think that in some schools it may not be the case, but if you're a great high school football player, odds are you're going to play on both sides of the ball. I mean, unless you're part of one of those programs that they just have so many kids that you don't have to, usually you're going to play on both sides of the ball. So I want to look at those kind of things. Yeah, that's what I want to see on tape.
Do you anticipate recruiting St. Louis and Ohio or certain areas that you're familiar with?
You know what? I think Coach will sit down with our staff here in a week after this is all done, and he'll put those pieces together. Just because Coach Knorr has extensive experience in Ohio, Coach Inge is a St. Louis native like myself. I've been in the MAC for however many years I've been in there, so there's a lot of guys with a lot of Midwest experience, and I think he'll put the pieces together the way he sees fit. I'm just so happy to be able to recruit with this on my chest, so it doesn't matter where they send me.
Thanks, Austin.
All right, thanks, Larry.